Hello and welcome, everybody. How are you doing today? My name is Philip Ramos, and welcome again to another edition of the Strength Studio. I'm greatly pleasured. I am super excited to bring you another great interview. Today, I am meeting with Roxann Vaneekhoven, Founder 2.0. She has an incredible story, incredible background. She brings so much to the table, and I'm so excited to be interviewing her today. So, without any further ado, Roxann, let me turn the time over to you and just introduce yourself. Give us a couple. Just tell us about yourself, all the different hats you wear, all the different things you do. Because again, when I remember when I did my pre-interview, when I had a chance to connect with you, I was blown away. I was absolutely amazed. I'm like, I can't wait to do an interview with Roxann because you just bring, just a different perspective, maybe different experience than what most people may be used to. So again, just go ahead and take a few minutes, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, all the different hats you wear in your personal life as well as your business life.
Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm excited to be here because I do think my lineup of strengths are unique and I love them. I think a lot of people kind of shy away from some of their strengths or wish they had other strengths, but I love my strengths and I try to operate in them. So I'll kind of work backwards chronologically. I have been with doTERRA. I consider my official beginning in the business aspect of it in 2020, and I consider that year a wash, not just because of the pandemic, but because I was very sick, two different seasons of that year. So 2021, I was doing it very part-time at that point in time. I was the elected district attorney in my county here, just north of Charlotte, North Carolina. I was the elected DA for 20 years. I was an assistant DA for 7 years, so 27 years in that office. I had to run for reelection every 4 years. And so I retired from that position in September of 2022. And that is when my more full time with doTERRA began. So I don't wear that hat anymore, which I'm very grateful for. I feel like I served my community very well. I was a very tough prosecutor, never willing to trade my principles for my pocketbook or for any other reason other than what was right for my community. Very stressful, high level position. I mean, we dealt with the worst of the worst while I was in office. If you were to ask me what my specialty was, it was probably sex crimes against women and children. And
Wow.
so built a team within our office that then trained other teams throughout the state on how to work with small victims, little children in particular, and make it as less difficult and less traumatizing than it otherwise used to be.
Right.
Aside from that, I went to law school in Virginia Beach, Virginia. My undergraduate degree is in business, specifically with finance. So I am a numbers girl, and you'll see that in my strengths. I have one son who is 17, very much an extrovert. I'm very much an introvert. And I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, very rural area. We grew up fairly poor. And the reason I even mention that is because I do think one of my strengths is being able to relate to peoples of all type.
Mm.
Whether I was in high school, I was athletic. I played sports. I was part of National Honor Society. But my first job outside was hoeing cabbage. And
Mm.
so a lot of, less fortunate people do those types of manual farm type jobs. So in today's day, managing my doTERRA business, managing my household, raising my son, and then I guess another hat that I wear, which is kind of hard to put words to, is I feel like because of my training and my experience with regard to my friends and family, I'm kind of the go-to person to help troubleshoot and problem solve. And um, that's a big job, and that's a
Sure.
job you have to have boundaries with. So those are kind of my primary sources of responsibility right now.
No, I love it. And how, wow, what a first of all, when we talked about your background, right, I didn't know necessarily the specialty, right? What you did in the DA's office, what you created. I love how you talked about you created teams to, help families and children and that sort of thing, and to really kind of, I don't know if the attack or, investigate or really approach, a specific thing that you guys did. And I think that that's amazing that because I think sometimes we often think that, in order to be in the category, let's say, of doTERRA or network marketing, you typically fall into this category and this category only. And I think, even just talking to you the first time, I was like, wow, this is a different person from a different, industry, from a different background. And I love that, again, network marketing or doTERRA, it really is, it's a place where all of us can come and play. So many different people from so many different backgrounds, so many different careers, so many different strengths can come in and not just find a home, but really thrive. And one of the things that we talked about before, and you've, again, at Founder 2.0, you accomplished something amazing, and you could see it in your strengths, right? All these executing strengths. Then you got, analytical and command, at number five and number six. So you're definitely a take charge kind of gal. But a lot of this you did, like a lot of this on your own, right? I mean, your journey has been very much you kind of in the trenches doing this thing. How has maybe your career, how has some of the things you've done in the past, given you the strength or the capabilities or the experience to kind of go at, going from where you went in the career that you were in to kind of even going it alone and building where you've what you've accomplished as Founder 2.0 inside of doTERRA.
Yeah, I think what I find so fascinating about our strengths is that um, we are so individually and wonderfully made, and marvelous are God's works, right? And
Yes.
so our strengths really are kind of God's blessing on our life. And so whether it was as a district attorney or a leader in doTERRA, I think my success comes in large part from the strengths God gives me first. That's what I'll say.
Sure.
And then how I use those strengths and steward those strengths, I hope is a way to honor him back.
Yes.
But for me, it is very much like I can get things done. I will get things done. I can plan and execute. I work very well when I have a specific goal. Um, I probably would say I prefer to work alone, and we can talk about that later. But in this instance, in building doTERRA, I very much was working alone. I didn't have an upline that was active.
Mhm.
They love the product. My enroller is a dear friend of mine, but it's always been kind of a little bit more of a hobby for her.
Sure.
And so, like, when you kind of trace my upline, the first person is like 6 levels up on the West Coast. And so I've had to really figure a lot out on my own. And I
Sure.
think that how that has served me, as whether it's as a district attorney or a leader in doTERRA, is just kind of a persistence
Hmm.
and a like a relentless pursuit of learning and figuring it out and executing it,
Yeah.
and trying to find ways always to do it better. Like I never in my career as a DA, and I will never as a wellness advocate for doTERRA believe that I've arrived and I've got it all figured out.
That's amazing.
Um, I think the other thing is I think I'm a born advocate. I mean, that's what I did in the courtroom for 27 years, and
Sure.
now I'm doing it in living rooms. And so it's just
Perfect.
a little bit different approach.
Well, and I love what you said, right? When you have a goal in mind, when you have something, you have focus at number one, and at focus at number one, really when you attach yourself to that thing or that, anchor yourself to that goal or that what you just talked about in the courtroom as an advocate. When you find something that you're an advocate for, your focus probably comes to life, right? And there's that term, the way we do anything is the way we do everything. And you can see your strengths, obviously, being very successful, very engaged, very focused, accomplishing goals in your career, your professional career, and then transitioning that over into doTERRA without the upline support, and doing it alone. You could definitely see that transition. I think that's amazing. That speaks volumes as to who you are and what you've accomplished, and I absolutely love it. Now,
Yeah, I should mention too, if I may,
please,
um, it is difficult in this business not to qualify someone above you.
of
At least
course.
for me, it's difficult because I want to feel like I'm contributing. I want to feel like there's a goal for me to reach each month. I will say, and I can't remember what year this was, but a couple years ago, I did get connected to a team in Hickory, North Carolina, with good leadership, good organization. So I'm like their cross-line sister, and they have helped me tremendously feel like um, part of something. And so I did get mentorship there, but you have to, like, I had to seek it out because it wasn't my fingertips. As many people, not everybody, and I can definitely empathize with this, but not everybody has strong leadership.
For sure.
And either you got to go find it or you've got to be it or a combination of the two.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that's one thing that, regardless of doTERRA, but just network marketing in general. One of the greatest, I would say, mentors, people I ever had a chance to work with, we learn lots of different things from people. And one of the things he always said is that network marketing is a volunteer army. And it's very true. One day people are in, next day people are out. And it's a constant roller coaster. And it's up to us as the individual to figure out why we are in it, right? Ask better questions, look at our strengths. What are the things that we got to do to be more engaged because it's what we want. And I think I think everybody needs to learn that, right? What do I need for myself so that I'm in it because it's what I want. And I absolutely love that idea. And so you can, if people don't want it, it's going to be, or they want different things out of it. Now we can't let that dictate what we're going to do or what we're not going to do. So, great job on your end of pursuing what you did and then connecting to other people that are, on the same path that you are. So, in regards to,
Yeah.
again, going from your career, going from what you did before, your past, stepping into network marketing, and starting a business, talk about that because for, you went to school, you went to college, you developed, this 27-year career in this office, built teams, as an advocate to fight against something, to, support this thing, and then stepping away. What was the driving force behind that decision to dive into entrepreneurship, to dive into network marketing? What was it that said, "Hey, I'm going to take what I've done over here, and I'm going to go well in on this"?
Mm. I think some of the greatest driving forces for me were I didn't want to go to work for somebody else. I
Ooh.
always say for 27 years, I didn't have an idiot for a boss.
Right, right,
So I was not going to give my time and restraints on my time to somebody else. That was a very big factor. The other thing is I'm a workhorse, so I wasn't just going to retire and do nothing. And plus, I was able to retire at a very young age because I had such a lengthy career and started young in that career.
Mhm.
So not having to work for someone else, it was a big draw.
Mhm.
Um, Freedom with my time and eventually freedom with my wealth was a big draw.
Mhm.
And then really the other part of it, well, because I could do those things with many other companies, right? I could choose a different company, but what drew me to doTERRA specifically is I want to help people not be constrained and restrained by the systems of this world. For example, insurance companies, hospitals, doctors' offices. I do not want people to not be able to get the health um, or the cure or the support with their bodies based on what their insurance company tells them.
Right,
So
right,
so from my perspective, whether that is giving them tools of natural health in their home or giving them finances so that they can kind of shake their fist at the insurance company and say, I'll just go pay for it myself,
yeah,
that drives me. I do not like people to be, I don't like to hear the word no. Like when someone tells me they can't, it's never can't, it's always won't.
right,
And so
right,
I want to provide for others, those that are close to me, like my family members, but also my team members, just that shaking off of the restraints that are placed on us in society with our health, with our wealth. And those are kind of some of the biggest culprits: doctors, hospitals, insurance companies, and definitely pharmaceuticals, because that is a prison in and of itself.
right. I absolutely love that when you were talking about your career as a DK as a DA, you mentioned the word advocate, and here you are. Everything you just said very much wraps around that same word and that same premise. And so, jumping into what you said, obviously time freedom was attractive. Wealth freedom was attractive. Not working for someone else, but you working for yourself is attractive. But when after that, it was very much this advocate that you are for a specific thing that you're trying to address, right? Or something. And I love that. Again, in your strengths, that's very deliberative, right? That's very responsible, very focused in what you're doing. And I think that's incredible. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And it's so neat to hear, again, people that were in one totally different industry, different business model, different thing, to be able to make the switch, but still bring the best version of who they were there to a totally different, right, industry, a totally different business model, a totally different thing. And that's one thing that I just absolutely love about strengths, about engagement, about all these different things. When we learn about who we are and how to bring our success from here over to here, we can accomplish anything. We can do all kinds of great things. And obviously what you've done thus far is evident of that. And I think that's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. Now, network marketing itself, right, is a unique structure. And you saw success in where you were and what you did in your career. And so I think that there were some great things that you probably looked at and be like, okay, I'm going to bring who I am right over here into this. Now, but for many people, they may not, they might have a hard time bridging the gap. They don't always know. I talk a lot about when it comes time to, not just strengths, but engagement. And what does it look like to know your role? What does it look like to know the expectations? And I think a lot of people struggle there because they leave this idea of the corporate world and they detach themselves from it, but they don't really attach to the idea of what does it take to be an entrepreneur, right? Because now those responsibilities aren't necessarily held by your boss or the company where they dictate. Now you got to find a way to dictate it for yourself. So for someone that's stepping into this industry, that's stepping into doTERRA network marketing, what do you think some of the most important expectations for them to adhere to? What are some of the most important mindsets? What are the things that you feel like that you see from your own experience? What are some of the things that they need to really kind of adopt to, so that they create a solid foundation in moving forward in this industry?
Mhm. Well, I think I'll start by saying, I don't want viewers to watch this and go, well, it's easy for her. She's
Sure,
a lawyer, she's well educated, she, ran for election, because that really in some ways is like a sword and a shield.
sure,
If I'm being totally transparent with you, when I
yeah,
retired in 2022, just because of the nature of the work that I did, and it was a very, very, very difficult year personally because I had two people very close to me be literally deathly sick.
wow,
And so much of 2022 was juggling that and was totally worth it.
yeah,
But when I retired, I was so depleted, that I feel like I went into hibernation for a while. Plus,
mm,
I'm an introvert. Plus, because of the position I held in my community, I always have felt like they always want something more from me.
mhm,
So I preface my answer with this because I feel like the best is yet to come
mm,
for my building,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because I don't think I have yet employed my secret weapon or my secret sauce, which is me being out in the community. I'd
right,
much rather do my work from home, but I've kind of started to deplete my warm market.
yeah,
And so people need to know, like, and trust you. And I have that broadly in my community, but I haven't utilized it like I feel like I should. I'm just
sure,
starting to see that. But the answer to be more direct with my answer to your question is you have to be very disciplined in managing your time. And I'll be honest, I have not mastered that. And part of it is, even though that kind of is all throughout my strengths, part of it is the depletion when I
sure,
made the transition. Part of it is being able to say it's okay to put myself first and my business first.
Yes.
And so, but being very precise and specific with how you manage your time and what you're doing with that time is critical.
Hmm.
The second thing I would say that again, I haven't mastered and I'm really just starting to refine is you have to have good processes. You have to have good systems in place. And if you're working alone, like I have for so long, you don't get the benefit of having the upline that's got all of that figured out for you. Now in my growth within doTERRA, now when we find a leader, they don't have to establish a continuing education program or a Facebook page or a, how do we do a welcome, we call them welcome visits.
Okay.
So you really have to have a very good process and system in place. I'm really working on that, and grateful for leaders, many of whom you've probably interviewed that are willing to not gatekeep and share that, whether you're on their team or not, because we all want doTERRA as a company to be elevated at the same time as we're elevating our own businesses. So time management, setting good processes and procedures up, being very disciplined, and then lastly, I think what I would say is not to take it personally. People really are busy. People
Yes.
really don't return your call, not because they're not interested, but it's because they're busy.
Yeah.
And so not to take it personally, it is a numbers game. That sounds so cliche. One of the things I shared with my team on our team call this last week, and I'll just say it because I think it'll benefit someone, is if you take an exam with 10 questions and you miss four of them, what is your grade? It's a 60,
Yeah.
which is really an F in
Yeah.
my book.
Yeah.
If you take an exam and there's 50 questions and you miss four of them, what is your grade? It's a 92, which is an A. If
Yeah.
you take that exam and you put your name on it and you don't answer a single question, you signed up, but you did nothing, what's your grade? Zero. So
Yeah.
what I was trying to drive home to them is if you just keep inviting the same four people and are white knuckling those people, your avenue for success is failure.
Yeah. Non-existent. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So you
Yeah.
have to you have to think big and cast a wide net. And it is conversations, it is numbers, it is your list. And you can't you have to be able to really work that. And how I did it, how I started to find success is I had my names list,
Hmm.
which we all kind of cringe when we hear that, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And then I would take like 12 to 15 and kind of move them over into what I called my active list.
Hmm.
And then as I would start to, cross people off that enrolled or what have you, then I would, bring from my list back over here so that that didn't seem so overwhelming, and so that you have a very specific roadmap for this week and the next week and the next week's work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. So one thing that you talked about a little bit was, when you talked about, for example, our health or our time or making time for us. And one of the things that in Gallup research, and this is just, globally, this is something that they've done the largest well-being data collecting research of any organization, any company involving 150 countries, 98% of the population. And when they look at well-being as a whole, and we're talking about your mental, your physical, and your emotional health, um, when you are doing something to improve those three areas, you're 4.4 times more likely to be engaged in whatever you're doing. So what they've identified is that people that call out sick, people that take the, that just can't cope with the Monday, all these different things, it's not because they hate their job all the time. It's not because they're actually physically too ill to go to work, but it's because they're struggling mentally, emotionally, with just engaging in their job. But when we focus on those things, we can be four times more engaged. Let's be honest, if we're four times more engaged in what you talked about, the names list, or four times more engaged in talking to more than just the four people, surely we're going to find that our odds of success have dramatically increased, right? And so I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't take ownership of their capacity, their well-being, and say, okay, what do I got to do to fill my own tank so that I can go out there and do this? Because as as network marketers, we really are entrepreneurs. And kind of like what you said, having the right systems or and making sure you're managing your time when you choose into this industry, that's a lot of people why they choose into it because now I don't have a boss, right? No one's telling me what to do. I don't have to clock in or clock out. But they don't incorporate some of those ideas or those concepts into their own business, into their own entrepreneurship, into their day-to-day activities. And so then they find themselves floundering, right? And then they blame their upline or they blame their downline or they blame the industry as a whole in network marketing that it doesn't work, but it does. It works very well when you adhere, when you lean into those things, such as right your names list, such as managing your time, such as the system, the process that you have, and then also your own health, right, your own capacity, and that sort of thing. So I love that. Those are some for anyone watching. Those are some incredible tips that I think that a lot of we complicate thinking that when we get in this thing we're all looking for just that easy button, and if we find it and press it over and over again we're going to find wealth or success. But it's a little more I wouldn't say complicated, but there's just more to it that it doesn't have to be that it's not complicated to incorporate. Sometimes you just have to be willing to say, okay, this is what I need to be successful, so I have to make these a priority, right?
Yeah, that's so true. I don't think it is difficult. I think it's simple, but it's not easy. And
Right.
simplicity comes more with good processes. To me, it's very formulaic. Like it's almost like a formula,
Hmm.
which kind of goes back to your system or your process.
Hmm.
And again, I like numbers. I analyze in numbers. I kind of evaluate success with numbers, not necessarily feelings. And so
Sure.
when I think of, how to get started, it's like you have to do the basics and you have to master those and you have to be putting your time where it makes an impact on your paycheck. Otherwise, you're going to I'm not going to say you would quit because some people are very driven by just like helping others, but you're going to have more success, whether that success is a larger paycheck or whether that success is more customers healed, feeling better, or both.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to comment on, and again, thank you so much for sharing, because that's one thing in doing these interviews and reaching out to people. You're right. There is my experience of so far of doTERRA and advocates in doTERRA. They want to move this work forward. They want to move this, and so sharing and getting all these great tips from different people as to what has driven their success and what has allowed them to be where they're at. I mean, is very true to our organization, our company, and I think what the company ultimately cultures, right? The environment that it cultures. So I think that so again, thank you so much for giving those, and I hope when people watch, they're taking those notes because those are common things, right? As much as we want to, like what you said, cringe at the idea of the names list, the names list is a good starting point. It gives us something on paper. It gives us the number, right? To start at and say, okay, these numbers didn't work. So what are the next ones, right? Or where do I go from here? Instead of, oh, it didn't work, throw up your hands, right? Nobody's answering the phone. They're not. We don't say they're busy. They don't want to talk to me, and we make it personal. And that probably going back to what you just said, because you're looking at things at numbers, right, from your strengths perspective, and not making it so much about the feelings. You can probably pivot very easily, right, into, oh, this didn't work, so let's pivot into to something, so we can identify, right, where this is not working. Let's identify something that is, and then continue to do that over and over again.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to not taking it personally. Like, have I ever felt mad or sad or frustrated by customers? Absolutely,
Sure, sure.
But at the same time, I think it goes back to that example I gave on the exam. Like it hurts less when you're talking to more people because you're going
Yes.
to get to more yeses as opposed to nos. And people really, I mean, they're just busy. And going back to that names list, it's the raw materials. Like you could really figure out, I could just sit here, I was just brainstorming as you were talking, like whether you build automobiles or whether you work in an office, like the raw materials there are the files. Like, here's the
Yes.
file. This is what I need to do with this file. Or
Yeah.
here's the assembly line for putting the car together. Well, that is your names list. It's your raw materials, and you have no starting point. There's nothing to, with regard to pipes, like there's no invite,
Hmm.
there's no present, there's no enroll, and there's no support. There's nobody to support unless you're preparing, which is, figuring out the well from which you're going to draw.
Right, right. Now, with everything, you've identified your strengths, you've identified being an entrepreneur, your success in your previous career, success now. What do you feel like you've been able to really identify as what I'll call your superpower? Everybody kind of knows I know this, right? You mentioned numbers, you mentioned your, persistence, being an advocate for things. What do you feel like is your superpower that kind of sets you apart, that you're like, you know what, I know I'm great at this, and not just in business but in life? How what does that look like from a strengths perspective? What does that look like for you, and what have you identified it as, and how does that set you apart?
Mhm. The first word that really comes to mind, if I had to sum it all up, it's grit. Like, it's,
Ooh.
I'm going to push and follow through and get it done, and whatever obstacles come in line, I will, like I said, there's always a way around it. And
Mhm.
so it's that finish. It's getting to that finish line. And sometimes, you might be crawling across it all scraped up and bloodied up, but I'll get there. I will get there. And, you know, God forbid somebody tells me I can't do something, because I'll try my best to prove them wrong every time. So it's just like this inner fire. I don't know how else to describe it other than grit sets me apart. I think that many people give up too soon.
Mhm.
Um, and again, whether it's you are have a money goal, whether you're trying to lose weight, whether you're trying to, I think people want such a quick result that they're not willing to like wait it and work it through. And so I'm so glad focus is my number one strength,
Yes.
because that's what most people lack, is that focus to
Sure.
see it to completion.
Yes.
So I'm very good. Like, grit kind of encompasses my ability to plan and execute,
Mhm.
and then the grit to kind of get it done. I would say that's my superpower. And let me be very clear, you don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be an elected official. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to have any level of education to have grit.
Yeah.
You just don't. You don't have to have any level. It's that inner determination that I will do this thing for however long it takes to have success. And then, even for me, when I reach that success, whatever that goal is, it's like, what's next? How can I be better? What can I refine?
Right.
Who else can I help bring along?
Yeah, I love that. When teaching about strengths, I always teach two different things. There's a strengths, right, or our talents before they turn into a strength. It's something that if you look up the dictionary, right, a talent is something that's been bestowed upon you. So when I hear, and speaking of, spirituality or God gifts, that's how I view that, right? That's God's way of touching me and saying, boom, right? All of a sudden, this flash of light goes off, and here's Philip and his strengths. And that's how I envision, what that feels like, or what that process. Skill, on the other hand, which can be grit, is really something we can learn, right? We can learn how can we, because naturally, as focus or natural, some of your executing strengths. So this is some of the things you do naturally. How can someone that maybe doesn't have, right, high relationship strengths or high influencing strengths, we can learn this as a skill. We can learn the values of what makes someone, that has it naturally in them, grit or focus or deliberative or responsibility. How can we learn this as a skill? And that's something that we do over and over again, and we practice. And I love, you've probably heard it before, Napoleon Hill, when he teaches about, 3 feet from gold, right? And that whole concept and that whole idea is that people are so much closer than they really think to success if they just give it just that little bit more, right? That little bit more of of grit, or identify what do I need to make sure that I can keep going in this process. And so I love that. I absolutely love that you identifying, what you do naturally and identifying how that's played a part in, and it probably when you were picking cabbage, right? There was probably a part of that, you're like, yeah, I'm going to see this all the way through, right? And get what I need to get out of this. And so I love that. Um,
Yeah, and what's interesting about that, I failed to mention, I was a waitress for 10 years as well. Waitressed before college, during law school, after law school. And that's probably why I relate to a whole lot of different kinds of people. And so, no matter what your background, because again, I don't want people to watch this and think, she has it so easy. She's a lawyer, because there's things about my strengths that aren't easy to overcome either. They can be blinders. And so I think what is so beautiful about network marketing is anyone can do it.
yes.
Anyone can have success at it. And I sometimes I'm careful when I teach classes, and I don't tell people I'm an attorney because
Sure.
I don't want them to think I could never do that. You absolutely can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that's again one of the greatest things that is so attractive about this industry, doTERRA, is that you come across all walks of life that are attracted to the business model, that are attracted to the concepts, right? What's interesting is that your background and I didn't graduate high school, I didn't go to college, yet we both want the same thing, financial freedom, right? We both want the same thing in terms of time freedom. We both want the same thing in terms of not working for someone else. We both want the same thing as advocates. I have a belief system around, in retention, engagement, strengths. You have a belief system, right, around what you've seen in terms of health, and and people don't have to say they don't have to choose into whatever choices that the rest of the world says, whether if it's doctor, where the hospital, these things, but that they have other opportunities, other ways to approach health. And so as even though both of us come from different backgrounds, we can bring our strengths, we can bring who we are, we can bring our past experiences, our stories, right? All of our messes to this same business model and same company, and have fun and thrive and grow and connect. And so that's what I love about this. Now,
Mhm.
one of the things that you mentioned, and I love that you brought up, because I think when people say strengths, they think, oh, this is my strength, or this is her strength, or this is his strength. Then they automatically think if they don't have that, they consider it weakness, right? And that's one thing that, again, teaching a lot about when it comes time to strengths is we identify these are the things that just naturally motivate us and they drive us. What you don't have isn't necessarily weakness; they're just not things that drive you. Now, because they drive us so much, focus, achiever, right? All of your executing strengths, we can also overdo them, right? And we also can make assumptions with other people that might not have this naturally. So along your journey of knowing who you are, of committing to your and seeing all these processes work for you, you've probably also had some hiccups. What are some of the what have you identified maybe has been a challenge or maybe a blind spot in your journey with your strengths in with people and connecting with people and building this business so that maybe someone else can say, oh, I can see how I got to watch out for that, right? As my own, maybe they also have focus or deliberative or responsibility. But what have you identified might be a challenge or a blind spot in your strengths?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm definitely a work in progress. And as much as I love my strengths, I know that there are limitations to those as well.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I would say is in one word, it would be mistrust.
Mm.
And that is partly how I'm wired, but partly because of my 27-year career and watching people break the law and hurt other people and do horrible things.
Ooh.
And I'll be honest, even when I first started thinking about doTERRA, like that's just kind of how I come at things, is they're probably not telling the truth. So I read the fine print and I peek behind the curtain and I look at all the studies and so forth. And so that can translate into not trusting that leaders will do what they say they're going to do. or
Mm,
thinking I just need to do it for them. And so that probably has slowed me down in my growth.
hmm.
Not believing or thinking or trusting that someone's going to work is,
Yeah.
I don't want to say as hard as me. I don't come with that expectation, but
Sure.
as hard as they need to reach their goals.
Yes.
And so I think that can definitely be that can slow down your progress.
Hmm.
I also feel like I can get lost in the details sometimes, in the numbers and the figures and the planning and so forth. Um, lastly, I would say is that, most people like, I would hope most people like their strengths and they kind of attract people that are similar in
Sure.
some ways, but you definitely have to have a well-rounded team.
Yes.
And then you have to be wise enough to recognize that their strengths, although different than yours, complement your team, your whole team, your whole business.
Hmm.
And so that's an area where I have to work on. I really do have to work on because I'm built to work. I enjoy my work. I love to be productive. Um, so many times I'll just do it for them. And
Mm.
then I burn out eventually and get a
Yes.
little resentful because it's like, why aren't they doing this? Well, I've created a monster. I'm doing it for them. Why should they do it? You know? So that can definitely be a challenge
I love that.
for
I love
certain.
how, thank you for being so vulnerable and thank you for being so honest because I think that, people that really, you'd mentioned, you're still on your journey, right? And we're not, we never really get there. We just keep growing. And I think that that's one thing that you can hear in what you're saying is that you've identified maybe some of the ways that you need to work on through your process and also identified some of the blind spots so you can be the leader you need to be to other people. And I think that's critical. I think so many you mentioned not having a leader or leadership necessarily and when you started and getting going, and so creating that for other people, helping people identify is can make them strong along your journey of development by knowing this is I know what I'm good at. This is where I need to kind of develop. Now, in mentioning team and leading your team and working as a leader, what are how are some of your strengths actually shape your leadership style? For your team, for your leaders. How do you do it? How do you feel like you do it uniquely for them than maybe a different leader?
I think because my strengths, so many of them fall in execution, I can create a plan and see it to completion before we start and have very good strategies. I'm also very, very good at anticipating obstacles I've always got a plan B and a plan C. And that can work against you. Most of the time I feel like it works for me, but I sometimes I have to evaluate because you can spend a lot of time anticipating something that's never going to happen, and that's a little bit of time and energy wasted.
Right?
And I think I have to be careful sometimes with how I drive numbers and success, but I think that my team highly benefits from my ability to develop a plan and execute it. I'll just give you one example. We always do a big spring event and a big fall event,
Mm-hmm.
and we try to have it be like big enrollments, almost like a mega party, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak,
Mm-hmm.
or a mega class. And but we also invite current customers. So like my role, and I'm just really transparent with my team. I'll say to them, listen, I'll make sure stuff gets done. You guys make it pretty and fun. you know and like it's not that I don't like aesthetics, it's not that I'm not fun, but like if we're going to put this much time and energy, we I don't want it to just be a club activity.
Yes.
I want it to be successful for their businesses
Yes.
and successful for the people that come to see what their health need is and start to have tools to address that need. So I think that's how I help my team and organize my team. It is with these executing functions and trying to have a good schedule and a good rhythm. And but I've got a long way to go. I know that I have a long way to go. As I said, I'll never arrive.
Sure.
Um, but I think and I think and this probably comes from responsibility. Like I'm loyal to a fault. Like I'm the last one out. Like, the grenade goes off and I'll make sure the house is clear and everyone's out and I will be the last one out. And that's in today's world, you don't find that often.
Yeah.
People are so consumed with their self that they don't really that level of loyalty. And that is I believe that's a great piece of my strengths, but it sometimes can hurt your business because you have to be productive. You have to be executing the things to do with the business. And if I think that's an area where those critical conversations sometimes for me are a little more difficult because I feel like it's in certain degrees, I feel like it's being disloyal. And so I keep carrying their responsibility, but it'll wear you out. So there's pluses and minuses on both sides. But I think my team would be thankful for my executing strengths.
Well, I would say so, right? In this industry of, or specifically this business with doTERRA, right? Home parties and making events and doing events and, making cute things or giveaways and all these different things. There's a lot of things that do work. But again, having someone with such high executing strengths of the goal in mind, the end result in mind, what are we focused on? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to do? Bringing those collaborative, things together or those strengths together is probably what drives a lot of your success. Is you don't. I love what you said. I'll make sure we get things done. You make it pretty, and that's two things happening. Number one is you're identifying who you are and bringing yourself to the table, but you're also allowing them to be who they are and bring who they are to the table. And that's what creates great environments. When you look at Gallup research or anything when it comes time to team, uh, good teams, successful teams, isn't that everyone has one set of strengths or everyone has all of these executing strengths or everyone that has relationship. It's that you bring together, people opposites where someone's going to be good at this and someone's going to be good at this and someone leads by this and someone has these collaborative strengths, and when you bring those together, that's what makes the best teams. And so acknowledging who you are and allowing others to be who they are and bring themselves to the table, that's huge, that's massive. So way to go. That just says a lot about who you are, and I love that.
Mm. Yeah, I think one of the things I think a lot about as an area where our team needs help or needs more it's basically listening to Lindsay Norman talk about addition versus multiplication.
Sure.
I'm really
Yes.
good at addition, very
Yeah.
good at addition. But multiplication, and you hear these stories. I reached diamond in 4 months, and like that makes everyone else go, "What is wrong with me?" Right?
Yes.
And I've had great frustration. I'd like to be further along in my rank
For
and
sure.
the size of my team and the number of people that are working with me. Um, and everyone's journey is the same. And yet at the same time, I I'm grateful for the wrestle. I
Yes.
say you got to wrestle your way through things sometimes because it makes me a better leader overall, makes me more appreciative of the goals that I do reach. But if you really want to be successful in network marketing, it's called network marketing. And it's not direct sales. If you really think about it, you want to network market
Yes.
and not just to attract customers,
Hmm.
but to attract other leaders. And I would say I'm kind of at that stage in my business where I finally am getting that.
Yeah.
And I want to multiply. I don't want to just do addition because addition is very tiresome.
Sure.
And just kind of going back to one of the questions earlier, one of the things that draws me to this, aside from being my own boss and all of those things we've already mentioned, is that your earning capacity is unlimited.
Hmm.
And as long as I worked in the DA's office, particularly as the elected DA, it didn't matter if I was the best in the state or the worst in the state. It didn't matter what my conviction rate was. It didn't matter what my dismissal rate was. It didn't matter what my case age was. I got paid the same amount as everyone else. and never got a raise except every 5 years because that's when my longevity would kick in. And it
Right.
was always 4.8%. And so, I love the fact that my work will impact my paycheck.
Mm,
Now, at this stage, quite frankly, where I am with doTERRA, you have to be in the long game because I could go hang a shingle in my community and probably make $300 an hour.
yeah. Yeah.
And I am not making $300 an hour
Yeah.
doing
Right.
doTERRA. And
Yeah.
so you have to be in it for the long game. But that is something that should be like a gold star for everyone to think, wow, over time, my efforts are going to greatly impact. I bet you there is something, this just dawned on me. I bet you there's some kind of like bell curve that shows like your effort and your income in network marketing. It's like you're climbing up this huge mountain and then you finally get to the point where it's a little bit of a, okay, now that I've reached this point, I have to put in so much less effort to make a whole lot more money.
Yes.
And I look forward to that day.
I've been to, I don't know if you follow Eric Worre, and he is network marketing trainer. He runs GoPro, probably one of the most famous network marketing trainers in the industry. And he always talks about it's like getting your when starting your business, when starting your network marketing business, you always want to help people identify it as what you're trying to do is you're trying to get this plane off the runway. And in order to get the plane off the runway, it takes a lot of fuel. It takes a lot you got to gun it. You got to go hard because you got to get all this metal, right? All these people up off the runway. But the moment you get it up, boom, right? And then all of a sudden the wind takes over, all these different things take over, the laws of nature take over. And next thing you know, this thing is just it's just cruising. It's just cruising. But to get it up there, it definitely takes that. And it takes growth. I love what you talked about, where working with your team and identifying these different things, identifying what network marketing is, learning really what network marketing is versus direct sales. There is growth, and you're always in that mindset of growth, right? They talk about network marketing as an industry where it's self development with a compensation plan, and I truly believe in that. So along those lines, of identifying that, and clearly you have. What do you feel like is the single most valuable lesson that you've learned along the way during your entrepreneurial experience of, being in doTERRA, being in network marketing, what do you think, like, if you could leave someone with one nugget, if they could walk away and be like, oh my gosh, Roxann dropped it right there, mic drop, golden nugget, right? What would be that thing? What was the single most valuable lesson that you've learned along the way that you would impart with someone?
Hmm. Gosh, there's a lot to choose from. I think what it comes down to, and this sounds so cliche because so many people say it, is you have to appreciate the incremental stages and phases that over time add up to success. So it's the long-term consistency is really the key. And it's better to not do it alone. So multiply versus add. And it would be, if I could go back to the very beginning of my journey in network marketing, I think what I would do differently is I would find someone, and again, like I didn't know what I was doing. I was pretty much figuring it out on my own, but I would
Yeah.
find someone that had really good systems in place
Ooh,
and then model those
I like that.
and hope and pray and do everything I could to get them to share their secret sauce of how to set up really good systems
Yeah.
and and give value back to them because I don't want to just take, I want to give back, but I would find someone that had really good systems and I'd set those up and model those. Now, at the same time, what I will say, this is kind of my strength, is you cannot um, perfect it before you start, performing it.
Yes.
You can't, and I can fall prey to that. I can analyze it to death and never take off, but I would have really good systems. But when you're starting, you don't really even you don't know what you don't know. And I
Of course,
didn't know.
of
I did
course.
not know that. Like now I can see if I were to say what are the top three things you need to do beginning, middle, and end in network marketing is number one, have good systems. Number two, multiply, don't add. We have a great product, and again, I so much respect so many leaders in this doTERRA business in this world, but I really identify with Lindsay Norman on many different levels. And she didn't learn it in her first year with her other company. So
Right.
really good systems and then consistency.
Yeah.
Just little by little by little by little by little consistency. Those would be the top three things that it's almost like you can't fail if you do those three things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be it.
I love it. And, going back to what you started saying at the very beginning, that other people say it, or it may sound like a cliche. The truth of it is, I think that so often so many people are looking for something different than what already people have already told them, right? And I
Mhm.
think that we got to look at what is driving success and look more at the focus on some of those basics and some of those principles and not complicate it more than it needs to be complicated. And one thing that you've mentioned over the course of this interview, you've talked about systems multiple times, processes, that sort of thing. And Gallup identifies the most successful organizations and most successful companies in the world. With one of the key factors and the key fundamentals that they have that's different than all of the other ones that are coming and going, all these different things, is their onboarding process, is what they call it. Their onboarding process. Any company, any organization, any culture that you're trying to develop, to grow, to create, one of the biggest parts in bringing someone brand new, because it affects two things. Number one, retention, and number two, engagement. So if you want better retention, if you want higher levels of engagement, you have to have a good onboarding process, whether if you call it a system, whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't have to be necessarily the most complicated. It's just like what you said. You don't have to necessarily make this perfect thing before you get started, but you just have to know what that looks like in bringing someone from day one and maybe into right day 30. And what does that look like? And then where do they go from there? So, onboarding process is the biggest piece of the engagement and retention puzzle is making sure that's clear. And the more clear you have that and you take people through that, the more successful they're going to find. And this is not just in network, this is in network marketing. This is just in organizations in general. And so I find that fascinating. As we look at that here as network marketing, we skip that so often, right? We're like, we jump to all these different things. Someone says, I have a problem with this. Oh, I got an oil for that, right? I got a supplement for that. And we go to solve it, but we don't take them through an onboarding process, right? And a journey to create retention and engagement in that. And so I love that you mentioned that. I think that there's real value there.
and 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 independence, like retention and independence, because that's probably where I'll just figure it out for them, and I never create that independence. And so then I'm carrying, like if you use the airplane example, I'm carrying way too much baggage and I'm not going to be able to fly high. But the other thing I would say is you can't do it alone. Like you
Sure.
just can't. And I'm not just talking about customers and team members and sharers.
Yeah.
I have so much gratitude for Rachel Carter and her
Sure.
team because I don't benefit that team financially in terms of my work. Now, I think you could probably translate some of the things I share with them or help them with could be translated to monetary. But I think being willing to mentor me, um, was some like I probably would not even be where I am right now with doTERRA. I have a long way to go, but it was so nice to be able to have someone to ask questions and to bring me into their team. And I feel like there's an even exchange. Like I think there's many people on her team, although I'm not connected to them, that I bring great value to. And so you just don't try to do it alone because then you'll just have another job.
No, I think that's a great piece. This is right. You go back to what you said. This is a network marketing company. It's not direct sales where I go out, I close, and then I try to move to the next one, right? This is a network, and you're building a network, and you're building a network of leaders. And the reason why we use the word team in this, in this business model is because you need a team. If you're going to succeed in this business model, if you're going to rank up, if you're going to reach your income potential, you cannot do it on customers alone. There needs to be some team, a level of environment, a structure. And so whether you find that, and I love what you said about, obviously not having that upline, you went out and you connected with other people, such as Rachel Carter, to help you move forward and create what you've accomplished thus far. And I think that that's amazing. That's incredible. So, my gosh, thank you so much, Roxann, for sharing nuggets, for sharing your experience, sharing your story, where you've come from, what you've done, where you've been, what you've learned. Being vulnerable and sharing, what, I know I do this great, but maybe, not so great over here, and that you're working on it. Because I think that that's so often, I think so many people think about people that reach ranks or founder 2.0, and they think, oh, they've arrived. And now, they're just sitting there. But you're talking about, you haven't arrived yet. You've been very clear on that, and you're still on your journey and growing in your journey and development. And I think so many people miss that, right? They miss that. They don't make that connection. And so often they look, what they may see right through this filter, like our Instagram filter, they create all these different things in their brain that just might not be true. So interviews like this and you sharing, where you're at and where you're headed and what you're doing, I think is incredibly valuable for anyone watching, anyone that's connected to you. And they're lucky to have you. They're lucky to have your strengths, your executing strengths, so they can make things pretty and you can come in and get things done, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, as we're wrapping up, anything you'd like to share before we go ahead and end this for today?
The only other thing that I can think of is, I do believe that God has a specific plan. And I pray over my customers and my team and myself to lead with excellence,
Mhm.
to serve with excellence. And I believe that when you have God in the middle of your business, at the center of your business, and you will thrive in every area,
Mhm.
and just at the right time. It's not, everyone's journey is different. And again, while I wish I could say, I hit diamond in however long, um, I appreciate the journey, and I'm so grateful to the Lord for giving me the strengths, the customers, the team, the mentors, the training. And I'll just say this in closing, when I decided to really run for founders, I am motivated by money because I very much want my son to go to college debt free. I don't want to ever be in debt, all of those, the money part of it. But for me, it boiled down to one word.
Mhm.
The word was access.
Mhm.
I wanted access to higher level leaders so
Mhm.
that I could cut down my learning curve.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be alone. I would have access to trainings and just higher level thinking. And that was it for me. And I'm so grateful that I, wrestled through to the end because I'm very fortunate to have that access.
yeah,
And one of the things that's so beautiful about doTERRA is so many of the leaders are willing to share
sure.
and help. They can't help everyone all the time because they do have to support their team, but they're not gatekeepers. Many of them aren't gatekeepers. They're going to, share in a way that will help everyone's business grow. And I'm grateful for that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Roxann. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for those that are have watched this interview, and hopefully you're getting inspired. You're listening to tips. I hope you're getting a pen and paper, right? Taking notes. What are people like Roxann doing? How is she accomplishing? How is she utilizing her strengths? And how is she identifying the strengths of the other people that work with her, right, in her team? How is she going on? Where's she at in her journey, and what is she identifying as? Oh, what are the things that I need to up level. So again, Roxann, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing. And thank you everybody for watching this. Continue to come back, continue to check us out, watch more interviews here at the Strength Studio. We're always uploading new interviews, new different tips, new different things with strengths, taking in our spotlight series, taking deeper dives into different themes and different strengths. So thank you again. Have a beautiful day. Have a wonderful afternoon and pursue what you love. Get out there, bring the best version of yourself, and encourage others to bring the best version of themselves as well. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.